When you think of the word school, if you're like me, you think of a place where there's students and there's teachers and there is learning taking place. You have a curriculum that has been predetermined. These are things that the administration and those that have designed the education believe are important for the students to know and to do, and they're tied to standards and objectives and outcomes. So one of the questions I ask myself is, does curriculum ever change? And I think the obvious answer to that is, of course it does. If you think back 200, 300 years ago, I'm sure that they were not doing education or teaching the exact same things in the same way that they are today. So the educational curriculum evolves and it changes. And how does that process happen? Well, that's what I want to talk with you about today. And I think this is what makes teaching one of the most exhausting yet rewarding professions that someone can be in, because if you're a teacher, not only are you just planning for your doing your lesson plans and looking at learner outcomes and learner objectives and standards and instructional approaches, and at times you want to practice your lesson before delivering it. But if you're involved in a really excellent school, the school is going to pull you to help you evaluate its curriculum. In this video, I'd like to show you what the curriculum review process is not, because there's a lot of misunderstandings about it. I'd like to talk with you about what the curriculum review process really should look like. And then lastly, I want to talk with you about the benefits of going through all of that hard work to really come up with a good curriculum review process. I want you to think of curriculum review as the R&D of education, the research and development arm of it. Can you imagine what would have happened if we had never created cell phones and if we had not continued to improve upon the technology of the cell phones? I remember the first generation cell phone. It was huge in size compared to what it is now, but we were very, very thankful to have that. And then, of course, this is just an image of what today's iPhone looks like. Think about the growth in technology with the phone. If we had stayed stagnant at the first generation of cell phones, we would have missed out on internet access. Then somebody thought about, why don't we put a phone camera installed inside of the device? And then that allowed us to capture videos. And then came along Bluetooth, the GPS technology, the fact that you can watch your kids as they travel in their vehicles after they get their licenses, a touch screen now that's very common, and video conferencing. So many of these technologies came because people were not willing to settle for what they had, but they continue to push and to grow and to innovate. Think about educational technology. We started with chalkboards, and I can remember when they went to film projectors. Then there was the overhead projector, and then the document camera. And now we have learning management platforms. I'd like to talk with you about what the curriculum review process is not. When I became principal at one of the schools and where I've served, I remember arriving in July and being told that the English department had selected a new textbook for that particular school year, and that they had decided that they were going to use for their particular classes the year above the grade level that they were teaching. So if I was a third grade teacher, I would be teaching out of a fourth grade textbook. Well, it turned out that that whole experiment was a huge fiasco, because often when I ask educators about a curriculum review cycle, they reach in their pocket and they hand me a textbook evaluation form. And the curriculum is not the textbook. The curriculum is what you plan to teach, and the textbook is merely a resource that's used by the teacher for instruction. For example, videos like BrainPop, PowerPoint presentations, microscopes, classroom readers, these are all examples of resources that are used in the classroom. And the textbook review should happen after the curriculum review is completed. Let's talk about a sample curriculum review cycle so that we understand exactly what I mean. It starts out with an evaluation process, moves to revision and adoption, and then goes to an implementation phase. Let's talk about phase one of the evaluation. This is when you look at the scope and sequence and you're examining the sequencing of the instruction, the alignment, and the depths of knowledge that are being taught. You review the standards and see if they need to be updated to reflect 21st century learning. You gather feedback from your faculty concerning the strengths and the weaknesses of the curriculum. You evaluate the accomplishment of the expected student outcomes within the curriculum. You might take a survey of parents just to get a feel for their overall feelings on the quality of the education. You would conduct a literature review to examine what is best practices in the area of whether it be instructional technology or how the 21st century learner actually acquires information. You look at standardized test scores. You review philosophy statements for each of your subjects, and then you move into phase two. In the second year, this is a 3-year process. You don't try to do it all in 1 year. You do that phase one in year one, phase two you do in the second year, and this involves a revision and an adoption of the changes. You revise the curriculum guides based on what last year's studies had told you, and you review the resources. And this is where the textbook evaluation process comes in. You look at the instructional tools that you're using, and you ask yourself what professional development needs need to be accommodated in order to help the faculty be ready to implement the changes in phase three that we'll talk about in a minute. Here we are in phase three, which would be year three. The teachers would implement curriculum changes into the classroom. You monitor the changes to make sure that all is going well. And you're involved with group discussions within the various subject department areas. And the subject cycle overview looks something like this, where in year one, you see language arts is involved with the first phase, year two, and you just take each subject through a 3-year process, and it starts over every 7th year. What are the benefits of going through curriculum review? Well, you strategically and systematically improve student education. You develop a growth mindset culture among faculty, and it builds confidence in parents because they see the quality of the process that you went through, and you can demonstrate to them the rationale that you used for your changes.